Hello and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the science of what makes you, well, you. We're talking about inheritance, that incredible genetic blueprint that gets passed down from your parents, deciding everything from your hair color to your height.
You know, we've all done it. You look in the mirror and you see a little bit of your mom, a little bit of your dad, maybe even your grandpa's nose staring back at you. How in the world does that happen? Well, it's not magic. It's genetics. So let's get into it and start unlocking these secrets together.
All right, let's start with the big picture. You can think of every single living thing, from a tiny plant to you and me, as having this amazing biological instruction manual. It's basically the blueprint for life, and it has all the instructions for all of our characteristics. And the wildest part? It's stored safely inside almost every single cell in your body. Okay, so if we zoom in to the center of a cell, into the nucleus, we find these things called chromosomes. The best way to think of them is like giant, tightly packed recipe books. In fact, humans have 23 pairs of these books, and they contain, literally, all the information that makes you who you are.
So if a chromosome is the book, what are the words? Well, the words are written in a special chemical language called DNA. It's this incredibly long, twisted molecule that carries the actual code, the instructions for every single one of your traits.
And if we zoom in even further, a specific instruction within that DNA code is called a gene. So think of a gene as just one single recipe for one single thing. You've got a recipe for eye color, a recipe for blood type, and so on. The key thing to remember is this: one gene, one recipe, one trait. Simple as that.
So we know ourselves have these recipe books, but to really understand what's going on, we need to learn a little bit of the language they're written in. This is going to help us understand why some recipes, or traits, show up and others don't. It really just comes down to a few key words.
Right. So for any single gene, let's take the gene for flower color in a plant. There can be different versions. One version of the recipe might say, make red petals, while another version says, make white petals. These different versions of the same recipe are called alleles. Now here's the most important part. For every trait, you get one allele from each parent.
And that brings us to a really important difference. First, you have the genotype. That's the actual combination of alleles you carry inside you. It's the genetic recipe written in your DNA, like say, TT. Then you have the phenotype. That's the physical trait you can actually see. It's the finished product, like a tall plant. So always remember, genotype is the recipe, phenotype is the cake.
Okay, this table breaks down the language we need. An allele is called dominant if its trait always shows up, no matter what. We use a capital letter for that, like T for tall. An allele is recessive if it's kind of shy. It only shows its trait if you have two copies of it, like T for short. Now, if you have two identical alleles, like TT or TT, we say your genotype is homozygous. And if you have two different ones, like TT, it's heterozygous. Let's see how this all works in practice.
Now for the fun part. Since we have the vocabulary, we can basically become genetic detectives. We can actually use this code to predict which traits might show up in the next generation. Let's see exactly how it's done.
This is a classic experiment, a monohybrid cross, and we're going to walk right through it. So you start with two purebred parents. One is pure tall, its genotype is TT. It can only pass on a tall allele. The other is pure short TT. It can only pass on a short allele. So no matter what, any of their kids have to get one T from the tall parent and one T from the short parent. This means every single plant in this first generation has the genotype TT. And because T is dominant, what do they look like? They all look tall. But here's the million-dollar question. What happens when you cross them?
Well, when we cross two of those TT plants, this is what we get. There's a 75% chance that an offspring will get at least one dominant T allele, which makes them look tall. But, and this is so cool, there's a 25% chance it will get a recessive T from both parents. Its genotype will be TT. And that's how the short trait, which was totally hidden in the first generation, suddenly reappears. This gives us that classic 3-to-1 ratio you always hear about.
So you might be thinking, okay, if there are these predictable rules, why aren't all brothers and sisters just identical?
Why is there so much amazing, incredible variety among all of us? The answer, my friends, is genetic variation.
It really comes down to two super powerful forces of chance. First, when your body makes sperm or eggs, your alleles get all shuffled up into new, unique combinations for every single one. Second, which one of the millions of sperm actually fertilizes an egg is completely, totally random. The number of possible combinations is just astronomical, which pretty much guarantees that every single person, other than identical twins, is genetically unique.
And here's another layer of pure chance for you. Your 23rd pair of chromosomes decides your biological sex. Females have two X chromosomes, so they always pass on an X. But males have an X and a Y, so it's a 50-50 shot which one they pass on. It's basically a coin flip that happens at conception, adding yet another layer of variation to the mix.
But wait a second. The story doesn't actually end with our genes. Our genetic blueprint is just that. It's a plan. The final building, the final person, is also shaped by the world around us. This is where nature meets nurture. This quote really just says it all perfectly. Your appearance, who you are, it's not just a product of your genes. Your surroundings, your environment, also have a huge part to play. Your genes lay the foundation for sure, but your experiences and your lifestyle build the house.
I mean, just think about it. A plant might have the genes to be super tall, but if you don't give it enough sunlight or water, it's just not going to get there. It's the same for us. Our height is guided by our genes, yeah, but it's massively influenced by the food we eat. And the absolute best example? Identical twins. They have the exact same genetic blueprint, but if you raise them in different environments, they'll develop clear differences. It's the ultimate proof of how much our world shapes us.
So here's what it all boils down to. Your genetic code gives you the plan. This incredible, one-of-a-kind blueprint passed down for generations. But you are so much more than just your genes. You are a collaboration between that amazing blueprint and the life that you live. The genes are the starting point, but the final design? That's a story that you get to help write every single day.